Othering Podcast explores the world of marginalized communities with a focus on the disabled and LGBTQ+. In our discussions, we will provide a platform for our guests to advocate and share their stories. By delving deep into their difficulties and successes, we will explore the changes necessary to improve lives everywhere. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the Othering Podcast with Mike and Dory. Step inside a world where animals walk, talk, and think just like us. This collection of 30 short stories, each starring unforgettable anthropomorphic characters, is written with one simple philosophy. Everyone is welcome at the zoo.
Created for readers of all ages, these stories celebrate diversity, imagination, and the joy of seeing the world through different eyes. From clever foxes to thoughtful elephants, every tale offers humor, heart, and a fresh perspective on what it means to be human, told through the voices of the creatures we love. Whether you're looking for a quick read, a thoughtful escape, educational value, or even a modern set of bedtime stories, Welcome to the Zoo is your ticket to adventure.
Welcome to the Zoo is available now on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, Kindle, and free with Kindle Unlimited.
Welcome to the Zoo by Paul Smith.
PEP Radio, part of the Pennsylvania Equality Project, advocates for the rights of LGBTQ+ people, the disabled, and marginalized communities. We play music from all 7 continents from 1928 through 2025 in English, Spanish, German, African tribal languages, Korean, and Japanese. We also offer news, history lessons, and are proud to include the Othering Podcast in our programming lineup. Tune in on the Live 365 app, Roku, and Alexa every Saturday and Sunday at 4 p.m.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How are you today?
I'm good. How about you?
Pretty good.
All right, today we are talking to Carly. Carly has been involved in disability advocacy since her mid-teens. Her work centers around access to the arts with an emphasis on disability representation in music. Much of her growth as an advocate and as a person has involved deconstructing previously held ideas around her sexuality and ability to engage in romantic relationships as a disabled woman. Now happily bisexual and ambiamorous, Carly takes the things she knows to be true about herself and the world and uses them to help others feel affirmed in all aspects of her identities. Welcome, Carly. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yes, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So I want to start. I saw on your link tree you've done a TED Talk before, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
Can you kind of talk about that process?
Yeah. So funny enough, I found out about it through someone I met on Tinder and locally. And they were like, hey, I'm a former speaker. They were even just posting on their Snapchat story saying, hey, people should apply for this because it's a really cool experience. And so I'm like, you know what the heck, I'm going to do it. And this kind of for context, I'm currently based in Cleveland, Ohio, but this is back in Dayton. They have each city or whoever's involved with TED will kind of have their own chapter, whether it's with a university, a city, whatever. And so they basically had TEDx Dayton, the youth version. So for them, I think it's ages 13 to 20 or 14 to 20.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point I was 19. So I'm like, okay, I better do this while I still have the chance. So the process was I filled out their application form and kind of because I was thinking about it. And I'm like, I really want to have a space to talk about my advocacy because at that point, I just kind of recently left high school and I'm like, people used to always make fun of me all the time because I was a woman and because I was a big pop culture person, as we know. And there's a ton of stereotypes around fangirls, around young women who enjoy music or whatever it might be. And so I was like, this is a great place to talk about it. So I kind of just gave them a little rundown of what I wanted to talk about and why. And then after that, they had auditions and where I kind of gave them a kind of elevator pitch and they asked questions and things like that. And then, next thing I knew, I was chosen and started doing drafts of my talk. We did rehearsals, workshops, things like that. All of us get to work with mentors across the community. So I worked with someone who worked at a local library, and these people, are in education and things like that, just kind of involved across the community. And she helped me kind of work through my talk and give me feedback. And yeah, it was a really, like I said, I really appreciated like having the platform, because I knew in that environment I was not going to be judged. And I think for the most part, people who do talks with TED, people take it as like at like face value. They take it like what they're saying and just kind of take it in, and then later they can kind of think about what was said.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like people automatically could say, hey, this kind of sucks, or this is boring, or you need to stop being so obsessed. It was like I could just talk about it. And yeah, I think it was a really big moment in my career. Again, I had kind of started doing music stuff for about a year and a half at that point. And so I just really appreciated that opportunity, not in the way of like, oh, it's a TED Talk and I have, something big that I can say that I did. But I think it, in a way, I don't know, I don't feel like credentialing would be the right word, but like it kind of gave me something to say, hey, like people take this seriously more than just like people on the internet,
Yeah, it was validating.
Yes, and it was a precursor to a lot of things. Like so I've been doing my advocacy through my organization for about 6-7 years now, and it wasn't until last year that we got the nonprofit status officially. So I think that played a huge role in the courage that I had to do that, because there's a lot that can be said about giving that government like a stamp of approval, but and for some people it's a relatively quick process, but I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna put a couple $100 into this, I don't want it to be for nothing, because I very easily could have gotten denied, but I didn't. So that was a big door opener. But yeah, I am still friends with so many people that I met through doing that talk. Just so many inspiring young people.
And that's really cool that you got a chance to do that, because I think TED Talks are really awesome and great ways to, learn something kind of that isn't necessarily in literature and things like that. And so it's kind of like a brief summary, and then you get like this chock full of really great information that you can't learn elsewhere. And yet it doesn't feel like you're sitting through, a Ferris Bueller kind of teacher moment.
Right.
Where you're a Bueller.
And it's great to be able to have the platform like you were talking about for your advocacy. I mean, that's something that's so hard to get nowadays, it seems. It seems like the only options now are to call your senator or to go out and march on the streets, and we can't all do that. That's why we started this. But
yeah, and because a lot of my advocacy for a long time was centered on online action, it was like, and especially in like pop culture spaces, it's like, there's so much going on. Like there's somebody releasing an album or whatever, or going on tour or whatever. And so it's like, you kind of have to get through that noise. But when I was having that talk, I'm like, okay, you 300, 400 people can just sit here and listen to me. And you can, take whatever ideas you have and walk away with them. But you get a lot of, even if, internally they agree or disagree with what you're saying, you get a lot of respect from them in the moment, because, you at that point have been working on it for months, and my talk was like 10 minutes, so like I did a lot of practicing, did a lot of redrafting, and it was like probably the most like high profile kind of presentation I'd ever done. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm glad that people can just, and like I'm glad that us kids can like sit here and like talk about something that we really love, but also make people laugh, make people smile, things like that. We had kids that were talking about, there was a couple other talking about music as well, but there's one that talked about Tourette's and things like that. And so it's like, yeah, they can share their lived experience and also like, back it up with, hey, there's this statistic about this, or this is why we need more resources to this. And so, yeah, I was just, like I said, I was just really inspired and learned a lot from those kids as well, despite me being, I think I was the oldest or one of the oldest in that cohort. And so like I still learned so much from those kids.
I mean, it's a little different. I mean, I used to teach, and I learned so much from my students, even though and I think even if you're the oldest or the youngest, when you get a chance to share information, you can teach so many different people so many different things. And it shouldn't be based on, well, I've got the credentials, so you've got to listen to me. You don't you don't get people to listen to you unless you're willing to kind of give and take.
Right.
And I think so many people kind of forget that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that, if you're, saying something bigoted and stupid, that doesn't mean you get the same level of respect. No.
Exactly.
It has to be a mutual respect, and it has to be coming from an actual place of not just opinions, but facts too, actual facts, not just, well, I saw an anecdote the other day online and somebody said that they were suddenly cured because they had buckwheat. It can't be, it has to be actual facts.
Where'd you pull that from?
I don't know. I've seen so many people talking about how they cured this ailment or this disease with like buckwheat or just, rubbing oats on themselves or something odd like that.
So is public speaking something you've always enjoyed doing?
Oh no. Oh God. Even after that talk, like I still get really nervous when I speak publicly, whether it's like for a class presentation. I mean, even though I am, a senior in college right now, I still go into presentations in class thinking in my head, am I too awkward? Are people judging me? Are, all these different questions. And I think, it's a knee-jerk reaction to kind of be thinking in your head, like kind of critiquing other people, even if, out loud you wouldn't say something. But I think as a presenter, you have to kind of internalize the fact that people are going to probably have their own opinions. But, if they, well, it's one thing for them to come to you and say, hey, I have this piece of like really like warm feedback and genuine critique versus like, hey, you're ugly or whatever. Like, it's and I do, especially as a professional, I do accept that critique and feedback like as much as I can. But I think when you're in a position like a TED Talk where you won't have the chance to talk to every single person afterwards, you have to like be in your mind like, yeah, people are probably gonna have their own thoughts about this, but I'm here and I'm speaking what I know to be true, and that's all that matters. Like, I think, and what you said about like people saying bigoted things, like I think we can hold space for the fact that some people are uneducated and some people are willing to like have those conversations about, hey, this is not nice to say, this is not a good thing to say, this is a really, really harmful thing to say. But we also have to hold space for the marginalized folks that don't want to have that conversation, that aren't willing to sit at a table with somebody who believes they shouldn't exist. So I guess I really try to have the benefit of the doubt for people. And I think, as someone who in my kind of childhood, I experienced a lot of ableism that I didn't realize like was ableism at the time.
Right.
Or maybe it wasn't like actual ableism, but hey, maybe it was like mean girl behavior. So I think, as we grow and understand our identities, I think we begin to understand what it means to be oppressed and what it means to be subject to those types of things. But again, it's like when I'm public speaking, I'm like, yeah, people are going to look at me a certain way because like especially when I have my mobility aids, I look physically disabled. Like my posture isn't straight, or I might have trouble breathing sometimes. And so those things are going to be obvious. But I think at some point we have to be like, hey, we can't just force this person to practice this 20 times and expect that it's going to go perfectly well. Right. Like I've had, I've struggled with mental health like for, 6-7 years at this point. And so, anxiety is just kind of something I deal with. But I think, again, when you add in a marginalized identity or add in a difficult topic with lived experience, it adds a whole other layer. This weekend I saw some videos on reels about this Black woman who was in law school, and she basically got suspended from law school because she was in a class, and this is like I'm assuming like JD level classes. I guess they were showing some pretty graphic videos, and she was like, "Hey, this is not really okay. This is kind of uncomfortable. This is triggering." And everybody, of course, who was majority white, like everybody took offense to that. And instead of having the response of like, hey, maybe I should do better, or hey, maybe I should educate myself and investigate this, and understand why this person is upset, she was immediately villainized. So yeah, not to get too off the tangent of public speaking, but yeah, I think it has been really hard to find the happy medium, I guess, between sharing my lived experience while also putting it in a way that's like easier to understand. Because yes, I don't want to dilute myself or like, kind of censor myself, but I also want to make it easier for people to understand. I think when we talk about disability justice particularly, that's the whole concept of plain language and making things accessible is talking about it less in jargon and academic type terms and more in, hey, this person is different and that is okay.
Right.
I do enjoy getting to speak about things, but I think knowing my limits is important also.
For sure.
And you're right, and I like how you put it though. And it's just there's a time when to explain things you have to be as plain as possible, and then there are times when you have to kind of use those medical jargon or things like that to kind of get the severity and the seriousness across, because sometimes being too plain and people still don't understand the level of severity that's there. And so there's I guess you could say like a dance between getting people to your level and kind of meeting them at that level as well.
Exactly. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult, especially when you're coming from a place of oppression and things like that, because sometimes you want to just be like, why can't you understand this? Why is it so hard to get through your thick skull? But you can't always say things like that. And you have to, for lack of a better way to put it, just sometimes, swallow your own pride and just kind of deal with the fact that some people aren't educated as well as they should be.
No, yeah. I can easily tell you, it is at least once per day where in my mind I'm thinking, I've explained this to you like 5 times, you ignorant fuck. And like, it's like, and the amount of ableism that I've even experienced in higher education is a whole other topic, but it's just like, why should I have to explain to someone that is working in, and I will put quotes around this, accessibility in a higher education, sphere, why saying certain things or like doing certain things is ableist. Like, you should not be in that position if you don't fully understand the concept of disability justice. But it's of course a thing where it's like, and particularly in the state of Ohio, we have SB1 going on, and it's like, okay, all these institutions are now being told by the state, like, if you do like XYZ DEI things, then you're going to lose your funding. Well, then the schools are like, oh, we're just going to shut down our diversity departments, and then you're surprised when students like say that their quality of life is not as good on campus. Like, again, that's a whole other can of worms. But yeah, I'm just like, I even see like things in my daily life. Like I work in concerts and events, and like the amount of times where I've gone to a venue and I'm like, okay, why was this designed this way? And why is this allowed? Like, the amount of venues in my area that don't even have accessibility information on their website is like astounding. And I'm like, the people that I work for, like, they're basically like in a way contracted by the venue. So there's not much they can do in terms of getting that information. And sometimes if I like pick up a shift last minute, I'm like, okay, well, is this gonna be a no bueno? Like, is this gonna be a bad situation? Like, because I only so recently started thinking about like the fact that like if I'm forced to park on the street, how the hell am I gonna get my walker out of the trunk?
Yeah.
Right.
How the hell am I gonna, like, I went to like a cafe type thing, and I have a picture of it on my phone, but the accessible spot was like right on a little curb, and I'm like, how is anybody in a wheelchair or like who is not able to move independently supposed to traverse that? Like, I can do some trapeze type shit on it, like as long as I can hold on to the car, but I'm like, this is wild. Like, how is this allowed?
Yes.
And and the amount of people in the concert event industry who are so surprised that the ADA does not cover all the bases is just, it's even more just astounding, because I'm like, yeah, like the ADA is barely even older than me. Like, it's just wild. And like, I think at least the vibe that I've gotten is like, people get so exasperated when you say that what they've done accessibility wise is not enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, it's like they never think to ask what is.
They never do. And they always assume, well, I'm following the law. Great. That's the baseline. That is the absolute baseline of what you can do to, be accessible. It's a starting point. It's not, oh, well, because you have a cutout in front of the door, that means you've done all you can do. No, there's always more. And does that mean that you can cater to every single disability? No, it's difficult, because what works for, say, blind people may not work for wheelchair users.
Right.
But there is certain universal things that you can implement by asking people that are, quote, amazingly disabled, because we would know what works best for us, and implement those things, and use it as a starting point, because there's always more to do. I mean, just because you say, well, Black Lives Matter, I've done all I can do now, and it's not. No, there's more to it than that.
Right. Yep.
It gets frustrating when you always hear, well, you gotta work, you gotta work, you gotta work, you gotta go to school, and all of these things, and then when you're disabled, though, they don't make it possible for you to work or go to school. And, if you want me so badly to be a part of capitalism, then you're going to have to kind of give. And part of that is you have to include diversity.
Right.
Do you have accessibility issues at school?
I'm hesitant to talk about it a lot, because I still do go to the school, and I'm actually sitting in my dorm room right now.
Yeah.
But there's been some issues. I say, like, they cover some bases, like, particularly for me, I have my own bathroom attached to my dorm room, so that's super nice. But like, even the door to my dorm does not have a button on it, and like, I'm the type of person, I have, pretty good like mobility and like strength in my upper body. In fact, it's probably the strongest part of me is my arms. But I will be, say I ordered food or something, and my electric scooter has a little basket on it, but it's a small basket, so I'm not going to be able to fit like a pizza box or whatever in it. So, I'm having to navigate, holding the pizza with one hand and just, going through the door with the other. And I'm like, a button would make my life a lot easier.
Yes.
It's so funny, because I think about this every day. I'm like, okay, so you've got like 3 different entrances to this residence hall, and you're telling me you only thought to put a button on one of them, on the one that's the double doors. You do realize, like because my car, and luckily there's a couple accessible spots, but my car is parked by the entrances closest to the street. So I'm automatically going to go into that one, because, hey, I don't have to walk super far to get to my room. but like the door that has the button is faces like our kind of walkway that kind of goes through campus, like to the union and stuff like that. So in order to get to that door, I would have to go all the way, like pretty much halfway around the building. So I'm like, it's wild because, I bet if I brought this up, their first excuse would probably be, oh, it's a security issue. Well, you know what's a security issue? I fall and break my fucking skull open.
Yes.
Yep.
Because that's what it feels like sometimes. I'm like, Jesus Christ, you guys care more about and I will say the area that my campus is in is relatively safe. Like we don't really have, there's a lot of car accidents because people, don't know how to drive like mindful human beings, but it's relatively safe. So usually security is not really an issue. And so I'm like, why are we caring more about, because we have to, the way that my school does our security or whatever for the buildings is you swipe in with your phone, like your student ID is on your phone. And I have certain thoughts about that as well, but it's like you swipe in and you've got 10 seconds to open the door before it locks on you again. And so it's like, it just does not compute for me. I do get it. I know you don't want randos going in the dorm building, but if Susie can bring in her 25-year-old boyfriend with no problem because she swiped in, then I should be able to, get in with my fucking mobility aid.
Yes.
Jesus Christ. It's just wild to me. And there was a whole other situation. Again, I'm going to be pretty limited in how I talk about it, but again, I'm in Northeast Ohio, so we get pretty much pummeled with snow.
Yes.
And I knew that when I transferred to this university and all that. I knew I was getting into, my family was like, here, take snowboats here, and that's pretty much why they got me the electric scooter in the first place, because one, they knew I wasn't going to be able to walk the entire campus, and two, they knew it was going to be rough terrain even if I did walk the campus. So I'm like, great. But yeah, I had a situation where I missed class because the sidewalks were not plowed. Mm-hmm. And I was already freezing cold. I was as bundled up as I could be. And it's a long and winding story, but it was basically a situation where I was told hey, it's your responsibility to get yourself to class. And it's another thing where they find a loophole because our campus is kind of intertwined with city property. So if it's city property, they can't touch it. If it's university property, the city can't touch it. Right. So it's why can we not work together?
Yes.
To clear because it's not even just the students that are just walking about. It's normal everyday ass people. Mm-hmm. It's people who will walk through the campus just with their dogs or whatever. So why can't we just find a solution and work together with everybody? It really, and again, it's in that situation, they were more concerned about, oh, are you meeting our standards? Then are you safe? And are you healthy and in a good, okay situation? So yeah, and I think about the politics of oh, it's a private school and they're funded XYZ ways. I'm like, it really should not matter because no. I've seen there's another activist by the name of St. Hammer, and she went to a private school, I believe in North Carolina, mm-hmm. And she made TikToks, pretty much went viral, talking about the accommodations that she was able to get on her dorm room or whatever for her disability. And I'm like, so you're telling me that my school can get away with not doing the bare minimum, but her school, who is also a private institution, can do all of this? It doesn't, at that point, it does not matter. It's the fact that there are people who either do or do not want to do or do not want to make things accessible. It's literally an individual choice at that point, because if the board of trustees are sitting here and saying, oh, we have, XYZ amount of money, but we don't think accessibility is a priority, then that's their problem. That's not a me problem. And
That's right.
I will say, I've tried to like advocate internally and be like, hey, if you guys are gonna like have these things on campus that aren't 100% accessible, like tell people about it.
Yeah.
Be like, you can be transparent about those things without, because I know they're worried about painting their university in a bad light. But again, what is going to happen when somebody gets hurt, like, and says, hey, like, this could have been prevented? Because let me tell you, one of my friends actually did get hurt. She, sought medical care. Of course, disabled folks 99% of the time are not going to pursue litigation because we don't have the time or money or resources for that. But like, it's wild that even somebody getting hurt, somebody missing class, whatever, is not enough for them. No. Like, why is it? I even just saw like a video this morning. Like, why is it that Gaza had to get to level 5 starvation for people to care? I'm like, you know there's something going on. You know that you caused harm. You know that these issues exist. So why not prevent them? And that's again, people who are not disabled or actively impacted by disability, they view us bringing up issues as complaining.
Yeah, they
do. And that will always be my biggest pet peeve, because why is it complaining when, and it could be something that people are repeatedly bringing up. And then I'm like, well, we wouldn't have to, complain if you had just fixed it the first time.
Yes.
Like, we're not expecting perfection overnight. What we are expecting is something to be done and action to be taken. At the bare minimum, fucking ask us what you should do.
Yes.
Ask us for resources. Ask us to test something out for feedback. Something, for God's sake. Like, you can't sit there and say, we tried, or you weren't helping us, or whatever, when we like, I have, talked to administration and been like, hey, here's some resources. Hey, here's what I might suggest to solve this problem. And then they want to act like, like it wasn't their problem if something happens again, So yeah, in summary, there have been issues, and a lot of things I really wish I would have known, because, as a transfer student, I was like, considering multiple different schools at the time, and I was looking at like public universities, and I'm like, okay, these campuses are kind of massive, not really in the most accessible place, and so I'm like, okay, maybe I'll just go with this, private school that seems to have a smaller campus, but at what cost?
Yeah, and I don't understand why they can't all do, at least something. Like, you mentioned during winter how, some of the sidewalks aren't even shoveled or anything like that. Let's just say, for shits and giggles, that disability didn't even exist.
Right.
You have just created the reason why disability now exists.
It's true.
So, do you want to get sued up the wazoo because you've created the situation and where everybody gets disabled? Or do you want to be able to mitigate that and, fucking shovel the sidewalks? I mean, it's just a lot of disability, helping people with disabilities and such like that is a lot of common sense things. If you have ice on the sidewalk, get rid of the ice. Shovel the sidewalk during the winter. Shovel the, where you can. And because now you've just made it so that not only the students, but people who are walking through the campus are going to become disabled possibly, and the teachers. So now you've got everybody in wheelchairs that can't get anywhere and can't work, and now your school's closed because nobody can go there.
Right, and that's like what I was saying. I'm like, talking to other students, I'm like, you do realize like what this says about the university, about the school. Like, you do realize that, like, hey, even if legally they're covering all their bases, people talk, and like, for God's sake, I could, be a parent saying, hey, like, my kid went to this school and like got hurt and XYZ, and like saying, hey, do not like, you know, be wary of these things. And it's just like you said, if they don't, you know, plow the sidewalks, you're gonna have a lot more disabled students on your hands. And I think you're gonna be even more exasperated than you're being to me. Like it's wild, because like they kind of just want us out of the way. They want it so we can't complain about anything else.
One of our kids just recently went to college, well, 4 years ago, I guess, but it feels like recently. And I remember looking at the schools, and I wasn't looking at them as a disabled person, because they're not, and neither am I. But thinking back, very few of them were accessible in many ways. Where she is now, I would not say is very accessible at all.
I couldn't walk it.
Yeah. So
disabled.
It seems fairly common for universities, colleges. I don't know if it's just their size or what, but that they're not accessible. They're not making them right.
Yeah, they don't make it accessible because they're too busy worried about, you know, in their mind, they think aesthetics.
Money.
And the thing is that they complain about, you know, they want everybody to work, you know, especially in this regime. You know, you gotta work. Well, if you want so badly our money and our time, then make it possible for us to spend our money and our time. You know, I don't understand. All of these people are so fucking greedy. And that's what it comes down to, is greed. If you want that much money, imagine what you are leaving on the shelf. How many billions and trillions are you leaving out because you don't want to cater to disabled or LGBTQ or, you know, people of color, whatever. You're leaving, like, just in disabled groups.
Yes.
You're leaving about 1.4, I believe, trillion dollars. That's a lot of money to leave on the shelf because you don't want to do anything.
Right. They, in their minds, accessibility is not profitable because they see it as something they won't get a return on investment from. And
but
they
think do.
That, right. And they think that every single accessibility thing they have to address is going to be like $1 million project. Well, then how about you, like, with them, with their, you know, millions of dollars in funding, how about you ask like disabled folks who have to pay $100,000 for wheelchair accessible vans? How about you ask them how much of an investment it is? Because to them, $100,000 is like 1 year of tuition for one student.
Right.
Like, can we please be realistic here? Because again, like back to what I was saying about, what does it say about the institution? What does it say about the people that work there? That like, do you welcome like disabled people? Do you welcome queer folks? Do you welcome people of the global majority? Like, I because it's sounding like not. Like, it's just they crave convenience, and they don't care if it comes at the expense of everyday people.
But the problem is also, like, I agree. But the thing is that them thinking of convenience, do you know how many convenient things happened because of people of color and disabled people sitting there saying, this doesn't work right, let me fix it.
Right.
And now we have iPads because of disabled people. We have, you know, crosswalk signs and things like that, so more people don't end up disabled. And it's just, it's frustrating and maddening that we invented all of these things. We had a hand in it, and everybody takes it for granted. But you wouldn't have you wouldn't even have a damn pencil if it weren't for somebody who was disabled. And just, it's like, think of these things, typewriters, which led to the keyboard, which now, you know, computers. All of these things was because somebody was like, you know what, this shit ain't working, let's fix it, let's make it better. Right. And they were all either disabled or black or people of color for the most part. It's not to say that, you know, the global minority didn't have a hand in inventing stuff, but the global majority did a lot. And we all enjoy the fruits of those people's labor. And so all of those inventions and such, it didn't really cost all that much to invent those and to mass produce them now. So I don't see why they want to leave trillions of dollars on the table and be like, well, I did the best I could. Wah, wah, wah. And it's just like, come on. I don't if money is what makes the world go round and everything comes down to money, and basically it does, because, you want to control all the resources. Well, you're leaving trillions of dollars on the table just to only have the quote unquote ideal student or the ideal person. And it's stupid.
Yep.
If you're greedy, you're going to want that shit over there.
Right. You want my money.
Yeah. So, and if we're saying take my damn money, bitch, then take it. And make it so that we can be there and that we can thrive too, because when we all thrive, you all fucking thrive. Sorry. It pisses me off. It doesn't make any sense to me. It boggles my mind that you're so intent, not you, but in general, like, that these people are so intent on the quote unquote perfect person. And we all know what that looks like. And most of them can't even afford a pack of cigarettes. So why are we focusing on just them?
How do we reply to that? You said it so well.
I don't know.
Mic drop.
It's just so frustrating to me. And it doesn't make sense. And I think, honestly, like I've said it before, that a lot of times I think it comes down to jealousy. They see us happy and living our lives, being LGBTQ, being disabled, and actually smiling instead of, I'm black, I can't do anything, or anything like that. And because we're not going to, we're happy people. And why we're happy is because we don't feel the need to oppress everyone else.
Right. Yep.
If you're mediocre or less than, that's on you, not my fault, not my problem. Fix yourself.
Not my problem when you cry when somebody calls you racist, because not my fault.
Not my fault at all. If you don't want to be called racist or ableist or anything like that, then think of why people are calling you that and fix it. Be better. Do better. Once you know that you have done or said something wrong, try and fix it and try and do better. Yes, we have, it goes both ways where, when people fuck up, that we have to have the grace and dignity of our own, selves to be able to say, you know what, I understand that you fucked up and I forgive you. Let's fix this.
Right.
But it also takes you saying, I fucked up. I was wrong. Let me fix this.
Yep.
It takes both sides. And, if you so want this wonderful world and to be happy and all that stuff, stop hating too.
Right.
Because hate just brings you down. It really does. It makes nobody want to be around you because of your hateful ass, and you're annoying, and I'm going on a rant here because I'm just mad, but it's just, all of it kind of, plays a part, and just, I'm going to keep saying that. Find a way to focus on yourself. And when you focus on yourself and make yourself be better, understanding that you're going to have biases and prejudices, and acknowledge that you have them, and try to do better and try to be better constantly, because nobody's perfect. You're going to fuck up. You're going to flub. Right. But, you try, and then do better. And then we can get better.
So, speaking of reasons for other people to hate, you're also, in your bio, said that you're bisexual, so you're in the LGBTQ, and you're disabled. Do you find that you get additional, I don't know what to call it, crap because of that?
It's interesting that you ask that, because I was talking to some folks I work with, kind of in the music space, but they focus a lot on anti-harassment, gender-based violence, stuff like that. And they were talking about like, comments that they've gotten. And I told them like the amount of times that I've been on dating apps and, most like I'm bi, but I do kind of lean towards masculine, like men and masculine folks. But the amount of times that, white cis het men have, and sometimes it'll be the first thing that they message me. And it will be something along the lines of like, hey, I'd like to put you in a wheelchair, break your legs, or you must be easy because you're disabled.
What the fuck?
And it's usually not in those exact words, but it feels like that. And nowadays I just laugh because I'm like, it's wild because the audacity.
Yeah.
I in that conversation, I realized there's kind of two ways that people view disabled folks when it comes to intimacy. One way is either they fetishize us and they're like, oh, you're so easy because you can't move and you're in a wheelchair, and or they absolve us completely of the ability to be sexual and be intimate beings. And I think that latter one that I explained, like I said, affected me so much for so much of my life. Like even in my teens, before I was even, old enough to consent, it was like I was thinking about it because I'm like, of course, teens are gonna, as puberty hits, they're gonna think about those things. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, am I ever gonna be able to, do those types of things or like be intimate and enjoy it and things like that? And I'm the type of I'm in a very fortunate position where I don't struggle with a lot of chronic pain, but I do, struggle with muscle spasticity and things like that. So sometimes, it may seem like I'm tense because I'm like nervous or don't want to do something, where 99% of the time, especially if I've, fully negotiating consent with somebody, it's not because of that. It's literally because my muscles won't calm the fuck down. And I do have to, like, in the negotiation process, like, I do have to explain, like, hey, if we're doing something, my legs start shaking, it doesn't mean like anything bad. Like, I will tell you, I will stop whatever we're doing, and I will tell you, hey, I'm in pain or hey, I'm uncomfortable. But like I said, like most of the time, it is because, the way I like to explain it is like my muscles and my brain have like a love-hate relationship, because with cerebral palsy, you've got fundamental like damage to your brain tissue, and that in turn impacts the way like your neurons fire off, and like basically what your brain tells your body to do. And so it's like, I could just be, chilling, and all of a sudden my, leg just wants to, bounce around or whatever. So a part of that for me is like really being transparent. And then also like what you said about like doing better and being better. When I, a few years ago, obviously when I became an adult, I'm like, okay, yeah, I do feel ready for this. I do want to explore this part of myself. I ended up in situations where, I would be intimate with someone and they would immediately ghost me afterwards. And I'm like, shit, what the hell did I do wrong? And I realized, it took a lot of learning, a lot of reflecting, but I realized I was so intent on getting this like short-term pleasure or short-term satisfaction that I skipped kind of the whole process of like vetting someone and like finding out, like feeling out the vibes and seeing if they're a good person, because I felt like, I guess more context, at the time I couldn't drive, was still living with my parents. And so it's like, you do what you have to do in that situation. And like, when you have the house to yourself, you're just like, fuck it, whatever. So it led to a lot of that. But I think in the past about year and a half, my circumstances changed. I no longer like live with my parents full time, and I can drive finally. Woohoo! That took a lot, but now I have the privilege of being able to like go and explore like kink and BDSM and like intimate type spaces. I talk to people all the time about this is more than just like, hey, you know, I go and whatever, do whatever with someone. It's about like liberating myself and like proving to myself time and time again, even if deep down I know I'm a worthy being, if I even get the slightest hint of like, hey, you know, you're awkward or whatever, like even if my anxiety tries to tell me something that I know is not true about myself, I do my best to kind of combat that with like, hey, you went and tried this new thing, or you know stood up for yourself and your boundaries, or whatever it might be, and that is proof that you are worthy. That is proof that you are an adult woman capable of conducting yourself in a respectful, healthy, safe manner. And so, like I said, it's a very liberating thing for me being able to explore those types of things. And as it relates to like my queerness, I think, you know, I grew up, unfortunately, like in a, you know, I'm from Ohio, so obviously kind of a conservative area. And so I grew up kind of not fully understanding like what it meant to be queer. And like, I would say my time in, you know, not to sound cliche, but my time in fandoms and online spaces really radicalized me. Because it took seeing, you know, things like gay marriage like be legalized to realize like, hey, what I've been taught is kind of wrong. And like, I think it also took me, you know, when I started kind of becoming involved in kink and stuff like that, that was an opportunity for me to realize, hey, maybe you're not straight. And maybe like, because when I was in my teens and kind of exploring things, obviously not physically, but like I felt like I could not hold any certain labels because I didn't want to take away from anybody else. And I realized that is not the purpose of labels.
No, it's
Labels are, at best, they're a way to say, hey, this is what I identify as, and if you identify as this same thing, then we might get along. That is why there are so many people who just say I'm queer and I like what I like and that's fine. Like, people don't push labels for that reason. And so again, it took me so long to realize like, hey, you're not taking anything away from anybody by saying you're bi, or you're not taking anything away from anybody by wanting to be poly. Like, it's not, as long as you're doing it in a consensual, safe and healthy manner, like that's really all that matters. And so yeah, I mean it wasn't until last year that I, you know, was intimate with someone who wasn't a man, but like I realized like, hey, like this is me. This is me coming out of my shell and realizing like this is what I like, this is what I enjoy. These are the people and things that make me happy and fill my cup. And I mean I'm actively still kind of figuring out, because I think on almost a daily basis, like what is my, and I think part of it is the fact that there's so little research on adults with cerebral palsy, but I think about like my fertility and like, okay, if I'm 4'11", like, and suddenly have a baby growing inside of me, like, am I going to be able to carry that? Am I going to be able to safely do that? And so, you know, combined with that, and also thinking about working in entertainment and how like, okay, if I go on tour someday, is that going to take me away from any like relationships or like kids that I have? And so it's like both of those things are making me routinely think about like, do I want to have kids? What is that going to look like? Is it going to look like, hey, like I have the baby and then I hire somebody to help kind of take care of the feeding or the changing, whatever, or those things that might be a little bit more physically laborious for me, and then I have, you know, skin to skin time with my baby, or I, you know, spend some time breastfeeding them or whatever it might be. And that's going to look, you know, different for everybody. But I think, again, as long as everybody's safe, healthy, taken care of, it really should not matter. And so, yeah, I think, like I said, it's been a lot of like affirming myself, and with like, you know, as long as you're not a fucking asshole, like do whatever you want. Like,
Yeah.
Yep.
And so again, I've really like appreciated the space and time that I finally had to really explore my sexuality and what it means to be like a disabled queer woman, disabled queer like Gen Z woman particularly, because I will say I hesitate to even call men of my age men because they act like fucking immature prepubescent boys sometimes.
Yep.
Yes, they do.
And so like I again try to tell myself like you're worth more than just like the 30 minutes you gave to some random Tinder. Like you're worth more than whatever they're trying to say. And so like I said, I really try to do my part in sharing resources and encouraging people to be safe and to mind their limits. And it's like it's always a fine line that we tug of like, okay, do we want to disclose in this situation or do we not? But I think again for me it's like when I am in kink-centric spaces, I'm like, okay, yeah, my disability is not something that I can necessarily like hide and like just not disclose. But it's also like, hey, if I don't mention that I've got scar tissue on my right hip and somebody like just like does something to it and then it hurts, like that's not going to be a good situation. So it's those types of things that even if they seemed like so minuscule or so like just basic, like I mention those things because I'm like that's part of being risk aware and that's part of ensuring your own safety. Because yes, and this could start a whole other conversation, but yes, we as disabled people have to be aware of like what we need, what we don't need, what's not safe for us. But at the same time, we should not have to hyper fixate on that.
You're right.
Because the outside world is so unsafe and inaccessible. So yeah, I mean, even in my daily life, I think to ask like, hey, is this venue accessible? Hey, what, like, I really have learned to ask as many questions as possible. And I think the central thing is like, if somebody is offended or like thinks that me asking questions like ruins the moment or makes it awkward or whatever, that is on them, and that is a representation of what they think internally of marginalized identities and being risk aware and things like that. It's not anything on me, and I am simply doing my due diligence, and it is not my fault if they don't understand.
We do need to start wrapping it up, but I do want to say I grew up in Ohio, Southwest Ohio, and I know, and what you were saying about that area, it very much relates. I learned a lot when I moved in with Dory and even started with this community.
Yeah.
I had well, that just comes out wrong too. Oh, well, I taught him.
But before we go, Juan, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And also, I wanted to give you a chance, if you want to let people know how they can find you or whatever you want to put out there.
Yeah, you can find a lot of advocacy work on my LinkedIn, just Carly Webster. And you can follow me on Instagram at Carly X Webster. And yeah, I think I mostly like hang out on those two platforms for like work and advocacy stuff. But yeah, feel free to reach out if you ever need anything or have questions or whatever it is. I don't ever intend to be an expert on all things, but I can share my experience, and I can only hope that helps somebody.
I think it will. Yep. And because so many people will be able to say, you know what, that sounds familiar, that resonates with me. Right. And then be able to feel less alone, feel like they deserve everything and that they have coming to them, and they do. And that's, one last thing I want to say is that I don't care where you fall on the spectrum of disability or LGBTQ plus. You're human, you're beautiful as you are, and you are deserving of everything that you want, as long as you are not a flaming fucking asshole.
Right.
You deserve it, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise, because we deserve to be here just as much as everybody else.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
I really, really appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Please leave a rating for us wherever you listen. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok.
Othering Podcast is brought to you by Loudcore Productions in conjunction with your support. Your host, Mike and Dory Morris, graphics by Joshua Morris, and join us next week on the Othering Podcast.